Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.
Welcome to the latest edition of Future Trends, the weekly briefing on the changing face of global politics, economics, development, social and conflict. Here's this week's headline stories. Marine Le Pen found guilty of embezzling EU funds. Sweden to increase defence spending to 3.5% of GDP. Ethiopia first country to ban petrol-fuelled vehicle imports. South Korea admits to mass exporting children for adoption. Cold plunges could change your cells. Now for the latest in politics. Marine Le Pen guilty of misappropriating EU funds. A Paris court convicted the far-right National Rally, RN, leader of embezzling money from the European Parliament, and handed a 5-year ban from public office, which would bar her from running in the 2027 presidential election. She and 24 party figures were accused of diverting over €4.1 million to pay staff working for her RN party in France, which has the most seats in Parliament. Le Pen says it's too narrow a definition of how funds can be used. Poland to suspend migrants' right to apply for asylum. Since 2021, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia and Finland have seen a huge increase in the number of people crossing into their countries illegally from Belarus and Russia. Polish authorities have sent thousands of troops and border guards to police its border with Belarus and built a 5.5-metre-high steel fence. Israel's parliament approves Netanyahu's judicial overhaul. The law gives the government a larger role in appointing judges. It would give another 2 of the 9 seats on the Judicial Selection Committee, currently held by the Israeli Bar Association, to lawyers chosen by the government and the opposition. The political appointees would have the power to veto nominations to the Supreme Court and lower courts. Guinea's ex-military ruler pardoned over stadium massacre. The ruling junta has pardoned former military leader Musa Dadis Camara, less than a year into a 20-year sentence for crimes against humanity, linked to one of the country's worst massacres. In 2009, troops under his command opened fire during a rally calling for a return to civilian rule, killing more than 150 people. Coup leader sworn in as president of Nigeria for next 5 years. Abdurrahmane Chiani took office under a new charter that replaces the country's constitution, and has signed a decree that all political parties must be dissolved. General Chiani has led the country since 2023, after he deposed Niger's elected president Bazoum. Next to news in conflict. Burundi receives largest number of refugees in decades from Congo's fighting. The number of registered refugees who need food assistance has doubled to over 120,000 since January, as Congolese government troops fight Rwanda-backed rebels, who now hold 2 major cities. Bukavu, the most recent city captured, is less than 30 miles from the Burundi border. Lebanon and Syria sign agreement on border demarcation. The deal signed by the Lebanese and Syrian defense ministers in Saudi Arabia came after clashes in border areas. Earlier this month left several people dead and dozens wounded on both sides. Sudanese army in full control of Khartoum. The army said troops also had recaptured all the bridges over the River Nile that connect the 3 cities which make up Greater Khartoum, along with a military camp in Jebel Aulia, the group's stronghold in southern Khartoum. Residents have been reporting that RSF fighters were retreating southwards, apparently towards Jebel Aulia, the only exit route left to them. Macron says European forces in Ukraine could dissuade future Russian attacks. The French leader says European forces could be a card in the hand of the Ukrainians to dissuade the Russians from launching another attack once a peace deal is struck. He also announced a new French $2.2 billion military aid package for Ukraine, with Paris ready to rapidly ship existing hardware from its stocks. South Sudan opposition says peace deal has collapsed. The peace agreement that ended a 5-year civil war has collapsed, following the arrest of opposition leader Riek Machar. The UN said the country was on the edge of a renewed civil war following fighting in the north between an armed group allied to Machar and government forces. Moving to economics. Sweden to increase defence spending to 3.5% of GDP. The Nordic country cut defence spending after the Cold War ended, and in the early 2000s, but reversed course following Moscow's 2014 annexation of Crimea. Now, Sweden will increase defence spending to 3.5% of GDP by 2030, up from the current 2.4%, largely funded through borrowing. Why US wants India to buy its corn, and more. Despite its farm surplus, India keeps tariffs high to shield its farmers from cheap imports. The weighted average tariff in India on US farm products is 37.7%, compared to 5.3% on Indian goods in the US. Bilateral farm trade between India and the US is modest, at just $8 billion. As the two countries work on a trade deal, Washington now wants to push big-ticket farm exports, wheat, cotton, corn, and maize, to narrow its $45 billion trade deficit with India. Tesla sales fall by 49% in Europe, even as the electric vehicle market grows. There have been complaints about an aging lineup of vehicles from Tesla, and also a significant backlash against CEO Elon Musk and his affiliation with the Trump administration in the US. In Europe, Musk's endorsement of Germany's far-right Alternative for Germany party in last month's national election drew broad condemnation. Singapore's core inflation falls to 0.6%. It was the fifth straight month of declines, as most spending categories saw smaller year-on-year price increases. Economists said Singapore inflation will continue to ease in the months ahead, with a chance that consumer prices might even drop if the global economy takes a sharp turn downwards. Indonesian rupiah nears record low amid fiscal worries. Indonesia's currency neared a record low against the US dollar, as worries over slowing growth and rising government spending shook investor confidence in Southeast Asia's biggest economy. The rupiah hit a post-Asian financial crisis low of 16,640 against the USD, before the central bank intervened to defend the currency. Next, the latest news in development. Ethiopia, first country to ban petrol-fuelled vehicle imports. It's estimated the number of electric vehicles in Ethiopia will more than quadruple by 2032. That's largely because the government has banned the import of all petrol-powered passenger vehicles, becoming the first nation in the world to do so. It also effectively slashed the customs tax on imported EV cars from 200% to 15%. The country has abundant hydroelectricity and regularly suffers from fuel shortages. European aid agencies want refund from USAID. 3 European nations have asked the US administration for their unspent USAID contributions to be refunded. Sweden, Norway, and the Netherlands had been partnering with USAID on a project called Water and Energy for Food, or WE4F. The aim of the project is to help farmers and others in poorer countries develop innovative ways to grow more food without straining water supplies. China's Xi makes strong push for greater foreign investment. In an address to major global business leaders, the Chinese President Xi Jinping asked foreign investors to have faith in China's business prospects, the latest move to revive the world's second-largest economy that has been dragged down by a property decline and a loss of momentum. EU tells public to hold 72 hours of emergency supplies. Europe should enhance stockpiling of critical equipment and encourage the public to maintain sufficient supplies for at least 72 hours in case of emergencies, the European Commission said. Migrant deaths in Asia hit record high in 2024. The UN said 2024 marked the deadliest on record for migrants in Asia, with at least 2,514 lives lost along the region's migration routes. Finally, the top stories in social. Webb Space Telescope captures a star in the making. The outflow is about 625 light-years from Earth, in one of the closest star-forming regions of our Milky Way galaxy, according to NASA. A light-year is equivalent to almost 9 trillion kilometers. India among top suppliers of illicit fentanyl precursors. India has emerged as a growing player in the illicit fentanyl trade, according to a new US intelligence report, which comes as the US government threatens tariffs on countries it believes are not doing enough to stop the drug from flowing there. South Korea admits to mass exporting children for adoption. South Korean governments committed numerous human rights violations over decades in a controversial program that sent at least 170,000 children and babies abroad for adoption, an inquiry found. Since the 1950s, South Korea has sent more children abroad for adoption than any other country, with most sent to Western countries. Cold plunges could change your cells. A study found that cold water immersion for an hour a day across 7 days significantly improves cellular resilience and autophagic function, helping cells manage stress better. This adaptation could enhance health and longevity, potentially preventing diseases and slowing aging at a cellular level. Common herbs like rosemary may inspire Alzheimer's treatment. Researchers found a herb compound successfully enhanced memory and brain density in mice and could lead to new treatments for Alzheimer's. Using a derivative of carnosic acid, a molecule found in rosemary and sage, the mice showed improved learning and memory skills, as well as more synapses, the junctions where neurons connect and communicate with each other.
Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.